Hi, I'm Dr. Matthew Norton, the founder of People Plus Purpose, and you have found the Truth Behind Dentistry podcast. And today we're going to discuss Fearless Dentistry with Dr. John Gordon. Dr. Gordon has nearly 50 years of dental experience and recently retired from private practice with a focus on smile design, lifestyle dentistry. And now he feels a responsibility to mentor dentists to help them build unique and highly productive and profitable niche practices that they actually enjoy. He is also the host of the Fearless Dentistry Podcast. So welcome to the program, Dr. Gordon.
Thank you, Matthew. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to have you. So one thing that we talked about just kind of before we got started that I located on your LinkedIn profile, to your surprise that it was there, might I say, just as a fun side note.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the reference to you as the Steve Irwin of dentistry.
Well, years ago, Matthew, I made a decision to transition my practice to cosmetic dentistry and then into lifestyle dentistry. And when I made that decision, I closed my office on a Thursday afternoon and said, John, your general practice is done. It's over. And I walked in Monday morning and said, okay, now is your cosmetic dental practice. And I shared with my staff that that's what we were going to create a niche in, was cosmetic dentistry. The interesting thing that occurred that day that I had absolutely no idea was going to happen to myself was how I started looking at people differently. I didn't start looking for disease. I wasn't looking for what was wrong. I started dreaming for every patient that I saw that day. And I started asking myself questions. I wonder what would look like if they did this. I wonder if they whitened their teeth, if they did veneers on their upper arch. So I started dreaming, but then I started asking them, and people became interested. And I got home that night and I thought, today was awesome.
Great.
It was fun with every patient because I was introducing to them something new to them. A lot of them had never thought about whitening their teeth or changing out composite restorations, that had turned color on them, or straightening their teeth with Invisalign, something like that. They had never thought of it. Some people did the dentistry at that point, but a lot of people did some thinking. And guess what? They came back years later and they did the dentistry. So it was a change of my mindset, which gave me freedom to really look at my patients differently and look at it kind of like from an artistic perspective. How beautiful can we make this mouth, or handsome can we make this smile for this patient? And what effect will it have upon their life? That was an awesome revolution day for me.
That's great. I love that. I wonder how many dentists, I'm certain that there's a portion of them, but I wonder how many really are seeing their work from that sort of creative perspective and kind of the opportunities that they're creating for people versus more, how am I managing a crisis or something like that.
Correct.
I like that.
What was interesting, Matthew, was in visiting with my colleagues after I did this a few years out, and I developed a reputation in the dental community here in Kansas City, is so many of my friends and colleagues came up and said, John, good for you. I wish I had the courage to do what you did. And I asked them point blank, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you just do it? And that's where the fearless came in, Matthew, was that there was a fear in each one of these dentists as to stepping out from their normal box of existence. And go out on the other side of that border and just dip your toe in it and see how it feels. But give yourself the opportunity. And I'm glad I did. It was the most awesome thing I did for myself and my practice, because it allowed me to sense such a significant higher degree of fulfillment for myself personally and for what I was doing for my patients.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm often inclined to think and say to others that life is both too short and too long to certainly to be miserable, but even to live a life that's less than what you would like it to be. So I love hearing stories like that of the desire to keep learning, keep reinventing, and trying something new that even if that doesn't exactly work.
Yeah.
like you'd hope. There'll be something that comes, and it'll lead to a next possible direction. So that's awesome. So
Yeah.
relative to fearless dentistry, then, as you decided to call your podcast the Fearless Dentistry Podcast, what areas do you see the greatest need for fearless dentistry breakthroughs? Where is that fear kind of either boxing in dentists, boxing in dentistry, or how does that even relate for the patients maybe that are coming in for help?
I think a lot of dentists, when the new industry, the new technology was coming aboard with us, let's take the intraoral camera.
Mm-hmm.
That was going to be the answer for everything for us. And what we were doing in our minds, Matthew, is that we're thinking, okay, this camera is going to do what I can't do, and that's convince patients to do dentistry.
Mm.
Well, what the patients saw was not what we saw in the same picture.
Mm.
So we really still needed excellent communication skills, face to face with people, to assure them that something was happening with this tooth. Don't scare them. Don't
Right.
proposition them with fear
Mm-hmm.
that this is going to happen if you don't do this. I never did that. I just asked them, does that concern you? Does what we see concern you? And let them ask the questions and let me guide them thereafter. So some of the new technology, Carrie's view, those types of things, people would still question that. And so the simple question is simply, does that concern you? And people would open up and we were able to talk about their fears. But what was happening is I was not seeing when I was talking with the dentist that those things were making a marked difference in their production.
Mm.
And it all came back to the lack of their soft skills.
Mm-hmm.
They were leaning too much on the technical skills and they didn't have the soft skills to reassure the patient that they were the one to do that dentistry and that the dentistry really needed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it, what I look at, Matthew, is going back to the dentist and really having great leadership skills, great communication skills that built trust with patients. That's the bottom line with a lot of this is the foundation of communication and people skills.
Right. Yeah. Which are often kind of positioned as a secondary add-on, maybe like, okay, I could see the merit of that, but compared to the technical pieces, the software, the the new devices, et cetera, that compared to that, I don't know. I'm not sure it's worth investing a lot of time and money. And, from in my people plus purpose business, I mean, I'm looking through the lens of strengths-based assessments to help guide leadership, team, workplace culture. And sometimes it's a little harder than I thought it might be to help dentists see the value of utilizing help like that so that they really can improve their communication, understanding that other people have different languages than they do and that they're not,
Correct.
not like you said with the camera, they're seeing something different than what you're seeing. It doesn't automatically speak for itself.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And we automatically assume that it does because it speaks to us.
Right, right.
And we think the patient just being in our present that there's an osmotic transmission of our knowledge into their brain, and we can point out to them and go, "Oh, absolutely, I understand that, and I see that, and I recognize that." No, that doesn't happen.
Right.
So don't get me wrong, I had all that technology in my
Sure,
office.
sure.
I had the scanners, I had the iCats, I had the Carrie's View, I had the intraoral cameras, I had extra. I mean, I had it all.
Right, right.
But what really came down to me doing more dentistry and niching my practice,
Mm-hmm.
Matthew, were my soft skills, the communication skills. And in particular, the one thing was story listening. And and that concept just kind of fell in my lap because as I transitioned into cosmetic dentistry, I realized the people that were really needing and wanting this kind of dentistry needed a different type of affirmation.
Mm.
They needed a different type of a relationship with the dentist. And so I learned quickly that the intangibles will drive the tangibles. And the intangibles are the soft skills, the ability to communicate and relate, build relationships, develop trust through talking and visiting with people. So I slowed down, did my new guest conversations, asked the question, and here was the big question. Please tell me your story. Those 5 words changed my practice. And all I had to do was sit back and listen and then ask a question based upon what they shared with me. And within 5 to 10 minutes, I could see that patient relax. They were building a treatment plan with me. And guess what? They bought it because they felt listened to, they felt heard, they felt a relationship, they felt trust, and they helped build and they owned. And so by slowing down, I was able to sell cases quickly. And therefore, I could go into my operatories, spend 2/3 of the day doing some cosmetic work, and then play with easier dentistry the latter part. And so I became time wealthy, and the practice became financially wealthy. Slow down to speed up. The intangibles will always drive the tangibles, which are the hand pieces and the articulators.
I love that. I love that. As you're sharing this approach of what worked for you, what made this difference with other doctors, I'm imagining that there are responses in the area of, I don't see how I have time to slow down or listen more or ask such open-ended questions that might invite emotions and weird things like that would get me behind. I mean, is that not something that comes up?
Every time, Matthew, every time. And my answer to them is, are you going to let your practice run you? Are you going to let your practice exhaust you, stress you? Or are you going to manage and run and lead your practice? If you don't want that to be an issue, then start changing your philosophy. I'm going to say face courage, face your fears, and try it for a couple of days. Try it for a week. Yes, your staff is going to be outside the door going, come on, doctor, you got to speed up. You got patients out here. Well, when they see you walking out of that room with a smile on your face, you're selling cases, you're getting cosmetic cases, you're getting lifestyle dental practice cases. The finances are there. He's happier. He's becoming a better leader. The one thing that happened, Matthew, with this story listening that I was not prepared for, had no idea that this would occur, is I felt like I was becoming a better human being. I was listening to people more. I was focused with them more. I was developing stronger and better relationships with people. And I could take this outside of the office into my personal life. And consequently, the same was there. So there's just benefits to it. Slowing down to speed up, I know concerns them because they're used to seeing 25 patients a day and just boom, boom, boom. That's exhausting. That is just exhausting.
And they're not connecting, I think.
No.
Because I see even prior to communication, to improving communication, is that ability to connect. And how much time does it take to connect? Not a lot, really. I mean, I've helped others like almost see it like, how successful could you be from a speed dating standpoint, even from the standpoint of not slowing down a lot, but definitely connecting, focusing, listening, being present with someone. And I just think so many opportunities are missed because we're not present.
Correct.
No matter what speed we went. And I'm with you on that. I had a mentor a long time ago who encouraged me to ask a somewhat similar, more open-ended question about their story. It wasn't framed quite that way, and I came up with that thought too, like, okay, so well, how long are they gonna talk to me after and he assured me, he says, most people won't go more than about 2 minutes. If you actually listen to them for 2 minutes,
yes,
they will have said enough. Now, there's an exception here and there, and you have to kind of, find the way to end the story at some point with some of these people, but it's not the majority of people. And so it is a risk worth taking. I agree with you.
It absolutely is. And I'm glad you mentioned the time frame on that, Matthew, because when I went in there to meet the new patient and have this conversation, literally on the average, it was probably 5 minutes. And you could see when I first asked that question, tell me your story. You could see a little difference in their posture and their facial expression just with that. You could see them relax a little bit.
Mhm.
You could see that they were given permission to speak and really tell their story.
Right. Right.
And they shared what they wanted me to hear in order to develop that relationship. And once that was done, we were able to do a lot of dentistry together, and it was fun. I so looked forward to going into my office every day because there was an opportunity for me to have this conversation with someone.
Mhm. That's great. That's great. Well, I'm so glad that you, I don't know, stumbled upon, that you came to that place of seeing this possibility and being willing to be courageous. And I think courage is a good word.
It
Courageous
is.
enough to make a shift like that. It requires some walking into uncertainty, some vulnerability. I mean, there's a vulnerability in asking a question like that. Who knows if
Oh,
it's taking me out of my comfort zone. I'm more comfortable in more science language, right?
yes, yes. And I'm glad you mentioned that word vulnerability because that is a really, really big piece of this, Matthew, because I'm asking the patient to be vulnerable,
Hmm.
but they have to sense vulnerability in me
Right.
to share.
Yes.
If I don't come into that room and immediately start expressing vulnerability in a way that they can start picking up on it, then they're not going to answer those questions. They're going to be very hesitant and reluctant um, moving forward with that. That's
Yeah.
a great word. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And I think too, there's a clear parallel in terms of being a good, not just a good leader with patients, but a good leader for team members is
Correct.
willingness to also bring that vulnerability to ask more rather than just tell as much as we do. We tell patients, we tell team members,
You bet.
and you're right, there's more of a wall that goes up with like what's coming at me versus what's being invited from me. So I
Yeah.
think that's great. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. You know, when we're told things, a little bit of us evolves back to when our mother was telling us, our father was telling us,
Right,
or
right,
we're getting scolded, and we'd go,
right.
oh,
Yeah, right.
wait a minute.
Right. And in the dental office, how many people are coming in with sufficient fear and trepidation anyway, and that you're going to give me disastrous news that's probably going to
Yeah.
cost a lot, I'm
Yeah.
probably going to hurt.
Yeah.
So I'm already somewhat wary. So give
You
me a
bet.
chance to settle in. I think that's wonderful. This has
Yeah.
been great. This has been, I love this conversation, and I would love to personally to continue it with you. I and maybe there's another episode down the way to kind of develop some of this more,
You
but
bet.
for those people who are watching us who are saying this is good, I like what Dr. Gordon is saying and I would love to learn more. What's the best way, and maybe to check out your podcast, what's the best way for people to take a next step with you?
Okay. The best way for them to reach out to me, Matthew, would be my email, and that is drjohn, John, Gordon @gmail.com. They can go to LinkedIn and find me on LinkedIn under Dr. John Gordon. And then they can go to the Fearless Dentistry Podcast on most of your podcast registries.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been enjoyable, and there were some nuggets that came up today. So thank you for that.
I hope so. You're welcome. Thank you for having me on,
Okay.
Matthew.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. Absolutely. So, for everyone with us, this is the Truth Behind Dentistry podcast, and I have been with Dr. John Gordon, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you.